If you're thinking about buying a home in Charlotte right now, there's a good chance that you feel stuck because everywhere you look, you're hearing different things. Some people are saying, hey, wait, prices are gonna drop. Others are saying, buy now before things get worse. And meanwhile, rates are higher than they were a few years ago. Prices haven't really come down and the market just feels uncertain. So the real question is, does buying now make sense? And here's the problem. Most people are trying to answer that question by predicting the market. They're waiting for rates to drop, prices to come down, and for the perfect time to buy. But the reality is the market doesn't move in a way that's easy to time. In a city like Charlotte, where population growth, job growth, and demand are still strong, waiting can sometimes cost people more than it actually saves them. So instead of trying to predict the market, let's break this down in a different way. First, let's quickly level set what's actually happening in Charlotte right now. Prices haven't dropped significantly. They've come down in certain areas over the winter and they've leveled off in some other areas, but others are still increasing, especially in desirable neighborhoods. Inventory has doubled compared to the peak frenzy years, but because these numbers were so low, that doesn't mean that much. And there still isn't enough to call it a true buyer's market. The mortgage rates, while higher than they were, they've stabilized around the 6% range. And so what we're seeing is a market that's more balanced than it was a few years ago. But this market is still supported by strong fundamentals. This is where a lot of buyers get confused. Because the market is slower, buyers assume that pricing should be cheaper, but that's not necessarily the case. Since sellers are not wanting to sell their homes at a discount compared to their neighbors that sold last year, you're still seeing homes online showing prices being elevated. Let's talk about the argument for waiting because there are some situations where it might make sense. A lot of buyers now are thinking that maybe prices will drop. Maybe I'll get a better deal later. And that thinking isn't completely wrong. Rates could come down at some point, and if they do, that would increase affordability. But here's what most people don't factor in. When rates drop, demand may increase. Maybe rates are dropping because the economy isn't doing well. So though homes are cheaper, you still aren't making that much money to offset that. People who are always trying to time the market never think that they're gonna be in a worse position, although everyone else will be. It's pretty naive to think that way, and I say that because I used to be the same way. So waiting for lower rates doesn't always mean that you're gonna get a better deal. In many cases, it just means that you're not comfortable in your current position, which again, is okay. I'm not the one that's gonna tell you that moving makes sense for everyone all the time. So let's shift focus on the other side of things. When does buying actually make sense? The first situation is when you're planning to stay long-term and you've got a 5, 10, 20-year horizon. Short-term market fluctuations matter a lot less with this type of mindset because over time, real estate and appreciation, especially here in Charlotte, are driven by growth and demand. Second, if your income is stable and the payment fits comfortably in your budget. One of the biggest mistakes that buyers make is stretching themselves way too far financially. But if the numbers make sense for you today, then waiting doesn't necessarily improve that situation. Third, if you're relocating for a job or a life change. A lot of buyers move to Charlotte don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect market. They're making a decision based on timing in their life. In those situations, the focus should be on making a smart purchase, not a perfectly timed one. Now, on the flip side, there are situations where waiting might actually be the better decision. If you're not sure how long you're gonna stay in the home, let's say, you're new to Charlotte and you're just, dipping your toes in the water, and you're like, I'm gonna test it out. Maybe not. If you think that you might get a different job opportunity in a year or two, maybe buying doesn't make sense because, selling costs are high when it comes to actual buying costs and selling costs are high, where, any type of appreciation would get washed out with the closing costs of the sale. It might not financially make sense. Also, if your job situation isn't stable. So if you are working in an industry that is highly volatile right now, maybe you should wait. Or if the payment would push you over the edge for your budget. Like I just talked about before, you want to make that budget and those payments comfortable for you. Then if these are a factor, then waiting can make sense. It's about your personal financial situation and your timeline. The biggest mistake I see buyers make right now is trying to time the market perfectly. They wait for rates to drop or they wait for prices to fall. And in the process, they miss out on opportunities that would have worked for them just because they were trying to time the market. The reality is no one consistently times the market perfectly, not even the professionals. And if you really want to get a great deal on something, I would suggest to be always looking. And yes, there may be seasons where you'll have more deals come across your path and other seasons where it'll be a little bit more scarce, but always be on the lookout for the right opportunity. Also, pairing up with an agent who is active and not afraid to negotiate on your behalf can make a huge difference. But instead of asking, hey, is now the perfect time to buy? The better question is, does a purchase make sense for me right now? In the Charlotte market, where demand is strong and growth continues, the decision to buy isn't always about predicting the future. It's about aligning the purchase with your goals and timeline to fit your financial situation. If you're trying to figure out if buying right now makes sense for you and your situation, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to walk you through your options with you. And if you want more videos breaking down the Charlotte market, neighborhoods, and relocation strategy, make sure to subscribe as I post new videos about Charlotte every week. See you next time.